Today on the Word Preacher podcast, delegation, a kingdom of priests, and the Ten Commandments. I'm Brett Jensen, and this is the Word Preacher podcast. Right, our Come Follow Me curriculum for this coming week brings us to Exodus 18 through 20. Let's go ahead and dig right in with some reading from Exodus chapter 18. This will be verses 13 through 18. And it came to pass on the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning unto the evening. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand by thee from morning unto even? And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one and another, and I do make them know the statutes of God and his laws. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, The thing that thou doest is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both thou and this people that is with thee. For the thing is too heavy for thee. Thou art not able to perform it thyself alone. Okay, so here we have the problem is presented. Moses is spending all of his day listening to people's problems and helping them resolve them. Jethro, his father-in-law, proposes that he delegate some of these responsibilities to other just men who can help with the simple cases, and that maybe he just tackle the really big ones that they're unable to handle. Now, this was a divergence from the previous organization. When we think about what the previous dispensation did, it was a family, a patriarch, either Abraham or Isaac or Jacob made the decisions for their family. And that was really effective for the situations that they had. Even with Jacob having many sons and a large household, he was still running the household and having a family-based organization, a patriarchal head that kind of manages all of these things. It was the best way to handle that. But there were now a lot of families, hundreds of thousands of people here. There's a lot of people. And so having a single person handle all of the issues, that organization no longer really fits. That doesn't scale well. And that's important to understand, that God can change the structures and organizations that are a part of his congregations in ways that are appropriate for a given time. So, for example, today, it's okay that we no longer have 70s quorums and high priest groups on the ward level. We can have 70s as general or area authorities, and high priests are those, they can take a role in the elders' quorum to consolidate Melchizedek priesthood functions. Now, there are other fundamental organizational principles that don't change, such as the Lord leading his church with apostles and prophets. You see that established as Jesus Christ comes himself. He establishes his apostles, and that's going to be the standard. Those men are meant to be replaced. You see Matthias taking the role that Judas left. So it was meant to be something that keeps on. And as Paul taught in the New Testament, that it is a foundation built on apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the chief cornerstone. So we still see that one today, but it's okay for us to see other changes that will occur from time to time and not think to ourselves, oh my gosh, the doctrine is changing, because that's not. Of course, we can, in the same manner that Moses needed to delegate to other individuals, we can help sustain the prophets and apostles by doing our part, fulfilling the assignments that have been delegated to us. All right. Let's move on to the next chapter. If we look in verses 3 through 6 of Exodus 19, it reads, "And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called unto him out of the mountain, saying, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob, and tell the children of Israel, Ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if ye will obey my voice indeed, and keep my covenant, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. And ye shall be unto me a kingdom of priests, and an holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel." Okay, so the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were taken out of a world that had fallen into apostasy. When you think about what survived from the days of Noah, well, it was bits and pieces of the flood story. You see that all over the place. But whether that's in the Epic of Gilgamesh or things out further east, they're kind of missing some important details there. They know a flood happened, but kind of why and the circumstances and even the characters involved, they're missing some details. It was a world of apostasy. And it was important for the family of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the people who actually remembered what had transpired in the days of Noah, who had the correct, unaltered understanding of what had been going on and what God's purpose was for the children of men. They needed to help everyone else. They had the truth. The others, it didn't mean they were less valuable as children of God. It just meant they had less truth. And so it was vital for the details about how God was going to interact with this people to be carefully managed and monitored and recorded. This is absolutely vital for the sake of everyone else. And when we think about it, Israel's dealings with God, even outside of Christianity and Judaism and Islam, they serve huge numbers of people as a model for understanding how we are to deal with God. When we think about the principles that were established in the days of Moses and even before, the idea that righteousness brings blessings of protection. Difficulties are overcome by trusting in the Lord and keeping his commandments. Following the prophets betters our situation, and ignoring them always worsens it. Covenants with God are not just a one-time thing. They endure through generations of varying political changes and climates. In this way, they truly were a kingdom of priests, vicariously showing how we can interact with God and how God expects us to behave. Now, unfortunately, as we will continue reading, they largely abandoned this role in favor of other pursuits. But we can still learn from these examples and not be just another one of these people like the world around us who has lost the truth, the context of why things are the way they are. But we can strive to be a part of something more, something older, something unending, the kingdom of God. All right. Last, let's talk about the Ten Commandments. There are very few things that are as important and applicable from the scriptures today as the Ten Commandments. These really are still vital and applicable. So we begin with the beginning. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Now, of course, we'll discuss Israelite idolatry in a little more detail in future podcasts. But the principles of idolatry, they're not gone just because we have fewer idols today. We just have different idols. At the end, the kingdom of Israel, just as much as worshiping Baal was a problem for them, they also had other idols, such as believing that Egypt or some other political solution was going to save them before God could. We'll put God after, and really we'll focus on our negotiations with other lands and making sure that we have friendships in Egypt. This is a form of idolatry. And even today, people frequently put their social and political views above their faith. We can learn from what happened in the scriptures that that's not a good idea. Okay, no graven images. Now, frequently this is brought along the same lines as no other gods. But it is important to think about how common a pattern it is for counterfeits of something good to be employed for evil purposes. This is a technique used by Satan. Pornography is a substitute for marital intimacy in the same way that prostitution was in these days, or doing things out in the groves and that sort of thing. It's not actual marital intimacy. It doesn't fulfill those purposes. It doesn't help anything. It's a crutch. It's a graven image, something made to look like the real deal. But it is not. Education institutions that seek to replace parents, we can do it better, it takes a village. Now, certainly, individual circumstances may require some adaptation, but as a general rule, and we'll talk about this more, parents are the plan that God put together. Parenting is something so important to him, he asks us to call him Father. Other popular professionals who seek to replace prophets. The prophets are old guys who have some good ideas, but really you need some professional help. You need to pay people who will tell you that it's okay for you to be doing something other than what the prophets say. This is a counterfeit prophet. Worldly pursuits of happiness that are graven images of the path that actually leads to eternal happiness are all over the place. Vital that we watch for things that take us away from God. All right, third commandment, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. This is kind of an unusual one because, you're just saying something. Some people have said, it means acting in bad faith. You're acting, that you're allowed to use God's name just in a surprised or swearing sort of way, as long as you aren't acting and saying this is what God wants you to do. I think both can be true, and I'm going to focus on names are actually important to God. There are, in the scriptures, many names that can be difficult to understand. But if you pay attention, if you study them carefully, you will find hidden treasures of knowledge that come when you understand the connection between various names of places and individuals. The other thing is, don't cry wolf. If you're using God as an expression of surprise, anger, or something else, then when the hour of need comes, and you call upon God in some level of sincerity, you will find a greater than normal delay, because the Lord will not hold him guiltless that taketh his name in vain. All right. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. This is such a good commandment because it proves that people have more value than simply what they are able to produce. It's totally at odds with what the Israelites experienced in Egypt when they were valued by their production of bricks. You're idle, you're out to serve God, make more bricks. That's what you're good for. This is totally the opposite of that. And God commands everyone, regardless of their social class, to take one day a week to not produce, to not work at all on the Sabbath day. And when we disregard that, or treat it like it's just another day, we're reducing our own value. And that's because the greatest source of our value is not what we're able to individually produce, although we absolutely should be working hard and trying to do that. It is that God values us. And the Sabbath day helps us put him first. All right. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long in the land that the Lord thy God shall give thee. The fundamental unit of society is not the individual. I saw someone express this sentiment, that it's actually the family. And that's kind of at odds with people at all ends of the political spectrum in the United States. They're frequently talking about what's an individual right and responsibility. And there's absolutely some truth in there. But in the end, the family is the fundamental unit of society. The union of a husband and wife, the covenant of marriage. This is the basis that all human beings start with learning their appropriate roles and learning about honesty and work and goodness and rule, law and order, responsibility. All of these things are best done in the context of a marriage. A person honors father and mother by supporting them in their appropriate role. They seek to make it easier for fathers and mothers to love one another and their children. They learn to take responsibilities on themselves, and when they are of age, they strive to form their own families because they understand that fatherhood and motherhood are not only vital, they are honorable. All right. Thou shalt not kill. The word tretzah, which is in most interpretations of the Bible translated as murder instead of kill, is what the Hebrew is. In the King James Version, it's thou shalt not kill. But the distinction is important to understand because obviously God required the killing of animals for sacrifices in the temple. He justified taking life of certain criminals. He commanded his people to take the lives of enemies in war, and he's justified taking life in self-defense. Deliberate murder is different than this. When we fail to understand the purpose of life and we take it away, this is a grave sin, a terrible crime. All right, thou shalt not commit adultery. Again, honoring the marriage covenant, vital for society. The covenant protects children by ensuring that they have a loving team who will be dedicated to protecting and nurturing them as they prepare for the responsibilities of life. Anything that seeks to amend this fundamental covenant in any way should be resisted. And that includes a lot of things that you might not immediately think, like temporary marriages, people who go get married over a weekend to be intimate with one another and then get divorced, or even a longer-term marriage that is cut short for selfish reasons. Jesus was very anti-divorce. This is in the spirit of breaking this covenant. Or other alternate types of unions outside a man and a woman who have roles given to them by God and are bound by a permanent covenant. Any of these things that lead us away from that, we should resist. We should look at with caution and probably avoid. Many of the world's problems, including serious disease and broken homes, abandoned children, these would be resolved by compliance with the commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery. All right, thou shalt not steal. It's vital that we work for what we need and avoid making assessments of deserving when it comes to other people's property. We'll get to that a little more later. Next, thou shalt not bear false witness. Obviously, in legal matters, false testimony can destroy lives by either condemning the innocent or letting the guilty escape. Jesus was personally a victim of false witnesses, as were many of the prophets, as they are today. Proclaiming victimhood without being a victim is a more tempting crime in the modern age. Victims are supported. They receive a lot of love and good things. Fake hate crimes or other sorts of crimes that don't even accuse specific people waste time. They stir up anger. This is not good for society to be built on falsehoods. Finally, the 10th commandment, thou shalt not covet. Envy is not a new problem, and the solution to it is also of ancient date. It's gratitude. Be grateful for what God has blessed you, and what your neighbor has becomes a lot less important. In the end, the 10 commandments absolutely still apply today. And if we follow them, we can become as a holy people, a nation of priests. Everyone should be doing our part in establishing what's realistic, helping our prophets achieve this goal. Don't assume that the prophet is going to do it all. We can help out, beginning in our own homes. We appreciate the support for the Word Preacher podcast. Next week, we will be looking at Exodus 24 and 31 through 34, talking about covenants and calves. Of course, there is a ton of stuff we did not talk about this week. I encourage you to study that individually and with your family. And of course, as always, fight on.